the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the show. This is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to this full Q&A today. So any questions that you have, we're going to be getting into it. But also there are a few stories that we're going to get to talk about, and maybe that will also spark some of the questions that you guys could potentially have, because it seems like no one wants to shy away from the conversation of Trey Lance. Trey Lance is a big topic of conversation amongst the national media right now. It is a crazy thing that a guy who's played 2 football games in the NFL is being scrutinized the way that he is being scrutinized. And right off the bat, I'm going to start with Ryan Harris. He's a former offensive lineman turned broadcaster and analyst, and he had this to say about Trey Lance. He said, from players I've talked to and coaches I've talked to who are at the 49ers, Trey Lance is really leaving a lot to be desired in terms of fitness of his arm, whether or not he can digest a playbook and can really start the process game at a high level and process the game at a high level. Fitness of the arm. I've never heard fitness of the arm before. And then he ended up elaborating on fitness of the arm and what it meant. And what it meant was being able to play 17 games and then into the playoffs and make all the throws that he needs to make, and that his arm isn't basically conditioned enough. I've never heard anyone say that before. It is one of the most wild statements that I've heard so far, and Ryan Harris is the one that's doing it. So Ryan Harris is going out there and putting some stuff out there. And Big Papa says, if these people are going to make grass statements, they need their name and their sources need to quit hiding behind the screen. I'm with you, Big Papa. This is Ryan Harris, so everyone knows. So he's a former offensive lineman, and he's the one that made this statement. And then as far as his sources, I don't know who his sources are. He's just saying that it's players and coaches that are on the team. Mr. Corey, no, I do have Tart's picture up there because I want to have a conversation about Tart. As been reading some of the old news articles, listening to some of the things Tart has said, and so we're going to get into that a little bit later. But no, Tart has not signed, and that's why also Tarvarius Moore and Georgia Odom are on the thumbnail as well. And then Ryan Harris wasn't done there, because he said, so breaking news for you, I believe it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo in that game with better structure around him and having Kyle Shanahan want to create a week 1 narrative. So there is some interesting statements coming from Ryan Harris about Trey Lance and his fitness of the arm. I do not understand the fitness of the arm. And Logan says, where is Jimmy Garoppolo and who is he playing for? We don't know where Jimmy Garoppolo is currently. He has been pretty much on hiatus. I don't know where he is at, but we don't know who he's going to end up playing for. He could play for San Francisco. Ryan Harris believes he can be a 49er, and somebody that I actually really trust when it comes to national media is Peter King. And Peter King said, and that's why to me, unless somebody gives San Francisco a decent offer, I will not be surprised if they do the same thing this year, keeping Garoppolo, with one exception. I do think that unless he is simply not ready to play, I do think the starter opening day will be Trey Lance. So that is Peter King weighing in on the quarterback situation and kind of knowing that Jimmy Garoppolo it could be a part of this roster if the Niners don't get a deal that they're looking for, all the while knowing that $25.8 million is a lot of money to carry for a backup quarterback. So that's kind of interesting. And welcome everyone in chat. I see everyone coming in chat, and I really appreciate that. And Shane from Arizona 49ers Empire says, fitness of arm makes no sense to me. I don't get it either. I mean, why are we questioning the fitness of a 22-year-old elite athlete's arm who was making impressive throws from all the videos that we got to see from Javier Vega? Questions about his arm have never been something that I've been concerned about. I know Alex has felt the same way as well. So it's a little bit interesting, some of the statements and comments that are coming out. And that's why I wanted to kind of talk about it, because I wanted to talk about fitness of the arm and just what they're reaching for at this point. It's kind of interesting, that's for sure. And Donald says, "Hey, Bomber. Wow, he's showing shout outs to everybody else. Well done, Donald. Interacting. The chat is going crazy right now." And Ray says, "I guess Trevor Lawrence, Wack Jones, Zach Wilson get away with the benefit of the doubt, but when it comes to Trey and Fields and bashing continues, I guess white over black, typical bias." You know what? I don't know what the basis is for it, Ray. I really don't. But I see some very talented quarterbacks, and Justin Fields and Trey Lance are two of those very talented quarterbacks. Both of them can do elite things with their legs and elite things with their arms. And I think both are going to be good quarterbacks in this league. I think that, because of the organization and the situation that Trey Lance is in, it's going to be a little bit harder for him, because the 49ers don't give any information out to the media. So the media goes through and fills, holes of what they want to talk about with these outlandish comments, and that's kind of where we're getting there. And Bomber C says, "I want to spar Chris Sims and knock some sense into him." Yeah, if you've seen Chris Sims recently, that's why you made the thumbnail, because we got a little bit of conversation about what Chris Sims says, because Chris Sims actually had some interesting statements, and I'm not going to say that all of them I disagree with. I really do. And Forksall saying, "I'm happy the media is downplaying Trey." That could be a good point there. If they're downplaying Trey, maybe Trey won't feel the pressure. Maybe there won't be the hype that comes with it. So I think that, maybe that could be a good positive thing to look at. And Forksall's, bringing up a good point. Maybe this is actually a good thing for Trey Lance, and will actually, make him feel less pressured than potentially he would if they were hyping him up already. If they were hyping him up and building him up to be the elite quarterback. I mean, on Twitter they are. If you go to 49ers Twitter, there is a section of the fan base that has Trey Lance's numbers absolutely outrageous. 4,500 yards, over 30 touchdowns, rushing for over 500 yards. It's crazy. Like, there's a lot of things that people are saying. The one thing we need to know, Trey Lance is he's going to be a good quarterback. He's just got to have time to develop, and these lofty expectations are fine. Just remember that if he doesn't reach those, understand that this is a guy in his second year, and he's really having to learn a lot of offense and take a lot of this playbook in. So it's crazy. And David Campbell says, "Trey needs to get more diamond-encrusted bracelets to work out his arm more." David, I did see that on Twitter. I seen you commenting about that a little bit as well. I'm not sure that's the thing I want to see, but these guys can do and wear whatever they want. Millionaires getting that. It ain't no middle of the mall kind of stuff, if you know what I'm saying. Mr. Corey says the 49ers are behind these leaks for some reason y'all just named. Oh, maybe. So Mr. Corey saying the Niners are the ones actually leaking it with certain things in mind to go ahead and handle, the way that they want the media to be handled. Maybe they are guiding the media in a certain direction. Maybe they are working an angle. We'll see. Jimmy Garoppolo is still a part of this roster, and until he's not, there's going to be questions about Jimmy and Trey, when I think everyone that's close to the situation understands that if Trey Lance is capable of understanding this playbook, that he's going to be the starting quarterback this year. But whenever there's a second option, there's always a conversation. Last year, Jimmy Garoppolo's second option was Trey Lance, so all the conversation was there. Now the roles are reversed. It's a little bit different, yet the same conversation continues, because quarterback play in San Francisco is just always something that people really like to talk about. And then Laxdad says, "Mac Jones has arm fatigue." It was interesting last year when Mac Jones was throwing passes, and Kendrick Bourne, the 49ers former wide receiver, said it was like it was like throwing pillows, catching pillows, and even talked about how the arm strength of Jimmy Garoppolo was pretty good compared, and the zip on the ball was a little bit better than Mac Jones. So I thought that was interesting. And Ray's given his feelings on black quarterbacks always getting brash, like Warren Moon, Doug Williams, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, Cap, Lamar Jackson, and now Trey. History repeats itself. The one thing I will say, Ray, for sure, Warren Moon is one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, and Warren Moon definitely should have been drafted really high. He was a very big-time quarterback. I don't think Warren Moon still gets the respect that he deserves, because Warren Moon was an absolutely fantastic quarterback. And if Frank Reich and the Bills comeback doesn't happen, Warren Moon could have been a Super Bowl winning champion, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, really good football player. I'm actually glad you brought up that list. There were some good quarterbacks in that list that don't get the respect always that they deserve. Grish says, we need to be patient with Trey. Even look at Peyton Manning, 1 year developed. Yeah, Peyton Manning struggled in his first year. He set the record for interceptions in a season. So you're right. There needs to be a level of patience when it comes to Trey Lance, and I think that's something that they're going to do. Laxa says, bumping that Jimmy trade value up. It could be what they're doing. They could be trying to bump that trade value up. We know Jimmy's getting closer to being able to throw the football. We're about a month away from him being able to practice again. At least that's the belief. Once he starts throwing again, that means he can potentially work towards getting cleared. And if he's cleared, then he's going to be able to, be moved, whether that is through a cut or a trade. We'll see what happens. And that was one of the things that got brought up as well, is they were talking about when's the time that Jimmy Garoppolo could be traded. And one of the ways that he could be traded is once he gets cleared, and then these other teams go through OTAs and mini camps. Potentially a quarterback is not living up to expectations, or someone gets hurt, and then you can go ahead and move Jimmy Garoppolo. So those are things that can still happen right now. Shane, Arizona 49ers Empire, says this is going to be a crazy all the way to the first game. You know how Kyle just loves to keep everyone guessing. He sits back and enjoys the show. If Jimmy Garoppolo is on this roster, you're right. This is going to be the most talked about thing all through the offseason. Is Trey ready? Are the 49ers really wanting to go back to Jimmy Garoppolo? Then they'll be talking about reps in practice and training camp. How many reps are going each way? Is Trey really getting all the team one reps? This story is already writing itself, and there's a lot of people that I assume would really love for there to be a quarterback controversy in San Francisco. At some point, Kyle Shanahan's going to have to put the kibosh on it and make the statement go one way or the other. So I think there's a potential. And then Logan says, read this, please, bro. We make the playoffs. I think the 49ers have a playoff caliber roster. Yeah, and you always know that 2020 can happen. You can have all those injuries, but I do believe this team has been built for a playoff run. And if they get to the playoffs, that is dangerously, a dangerous proposition for the other teams, because the 49ers play really good defense, can get after the quarterback, and are establishing a offensive line and a running back group that could run the football. The maturation process from these young guys could fully be realized when they get to the playoffs, so I'd be excited about that potential. Ray says, Trey will always get criticized no matter what he has done for me lately era. Until he goes out there and absolutely lights it up, then I think everyone will, start jumping on board. The quarterback position is the most highlighted position in the NFL and the most criticized positions. Whether it's right or wrong, when you're the headliner of your team, you're going to get looked at that way, and Trey's going to have to weather that, and I think he understands what he's weathering. And then 49ers Fogey says, playoffs. We make the Super Bowl. Optimism is always king. Well done, 49ers Fogies. Gary, thank you for that. Mr. Corey says, exactly, talking about Trey Lance is lighting it up only diminishes what little trade value Garoppolo has left. There you go. And if that's what you're trying to do, then that makes a lot of sense. So I do like that. Let's see what else we got going in chat real quick. Bomber T says, Jessica diesel truck. Diesel is crazy expensive right now. Eesh. Yeah, if you're talking about gas, it's rough. And then we're going to get to Chris Sims, since Bomber T had brought up Chris Sims earlier. And Chris Sims decided that he puts out his 40 quarterback rankings, and I don't know if anyone really pays attention to these, but I kind of looked at it a little bit, because I do listen to Chris Sims on occasion. And the one thing I saw was Sims had ranked Trey Lance as the number 31 quarterback. And I think that last year he was number 38, so he's moved up 7 spots, and he's expected to be, this starting quarterback. So only moving up 7 spots was a little interesting to me. So I wanted to go through a little bit of the comments that Chris Sims said, and then we can kind of go over it. And he said, I see the talent, the potential, all of that. There's no doubt, if you're really into that, and you believe you can groom him and fix him and do some of that, I get why you take him at number 3. The arm is ridiculously strong, and he's a good athlete. I thought that was interesting, that part, and the reason I brought it up was just a little bit ago. We were talking about arm fatigue and potentially not having a strong enough arm, and then you get a quarterback who played in the NFL, and Chris Sims, who coached in the league and then worked in the front office with New England, saying that the arm is ridiculously strong. And so with the arm being, so this is a guy that's done it, saying Trey Lance has a strong arm. If if Kyle Shanahan didn't believe Trey Lance had a strong arm, I don't think Chris Sims would be saying it right now. So I thought that was very interesting and a reason to have a conversation about it, because it kind of dispels all the conversation, all the talking points that have been coming from the national media recently and the criticisms of Trey Lance's arm strength. And so I think Chris Sims is right there. He does have a ridiculously strong arm and is a good athlete, so I do like that. He said, I think the accuracy is still the big question. Just pure ability to be a thrower and a passer. Again, every game was a miracle to get back to 50% throwing. I mean, it really was. And I feel like Shanahan had to basically call to just let's get the completion percentage up. Maybe we can end the game at 50%. I really felt as I was watching some of the games that was a part of it. So here's where he starts throwing a little bit of shade at Trey Lance as far as completion percentage and his ability to complete passes on schedule and on time. And I think that though he says it kind of in a really aggressive manner. He had some explicitive comment, language in this as well. The way that he said he had to like throw miracles and all this other stuff. No, I honestly believe that Trey's just learning. Trey's just learning the game, and he's going to get better and better with his accuracy. Questioning his accuracy is okay, because Trey Lance did struggle with accuracy from the very first time I saw him all the way through the Houston Texans game. But it's not at the level at which they're making it seem. It's not like he can't hit the broadside of a barn. He definitely can. There are things about Trey Lance's game that still need to grow. But Josh Allen was in the same department. He was a 50% completion percentage guy until it got better. And some of that is just understanding where players are going to be and then being able to throw with anticipation. So I think, in this way, Chris Sims is stating there is a fact to this, but the way he said it is just a little bit over the top. So I'm not really a huge fan of that. And Big Papa says Sims could not have watched the second half of the Texans game. He probably didn't. I think what happens is these guys a lot of times develop an opinion, and they just stick with it. They just want to go with it all the time. And so maybe that's what he's doing here. And then he had another comment where he said he's throwing to a receiver who isn't that far away, and he's throwing as hard as he can. It jumps out when you watch him on film. And then I think what added to it, you see a few real quarterback plays where he could go through the pocket, read it, and do all that. That is another thing that is true. Is Trey Lance does throw the football too hard at times, but I think everyone already understands that, right? I mean, I don't think this is something that's different from what anyone else expects to hear. Is Trey Lance a young guy? Yeah, he's a young guy. And later, Logan, have a good one. I think Trey Lance is learning this offense, and part of him throwing so hard right now is the fact that he's not throwing with anticipation and throwing on schedule. Those things are going to come. Those things are going to come as he gets more comfortable in this offense and is able to decipher what defenses are throwing at him, and all the while where these wide receivers are going to be. There's a play, and I'm trying to remember what game it was from, but it's Joe Montana, and Joe Montana goes through his progression 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, I think it's Super Bowl 20. Is it Super Bowl 24 against the Broncos? Yeah, he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then comes back to Rice and throws a touchdown. But that's Joe Montana at the height, right? That's him being in the league for 10 years and being able to understand offense. We can't expect Trey Lance in year 2 in Kyle Shanahan's complicated offense to be able to go through all the progressions and make the right read right away. That's what he's working towards. What you're hoping is that year 3, year 4, he's going to have a mastery of the offense and he can do those similar things. So I think right now some of this stuff is like, yeah, these are great coaching points. These are things that Trey Lance needs to get better at. You know who else knows he needs to get better at these things? Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to be working through all this stuff during the offseason. He really is. So I think that these comments, though sometimes over the top, are not completely wrong. You know what I mean? Some of these things are. And we got some Chris Sims talking in chat. Ray says, Chris Sims is a bum like his daddy Phil Sims. The Niners are haters since the rivalry days. Now, do I think Phil Sims absolutely hates the 49ers? Sure he does. Was Phil Sims a pretty decent quarterback? Yeah. I mean, the fact that he has 2 Super Bowl rings, and one of those he started the game, basically didn't throw an incompletion. I wouldn't say he's a complete bum. Wasn't my favorite quarterback, and as a 49er fan, I do dislike the Giants. And then Bomber T says Chris Sims is jealous of Kyle. He could be. One thing we know about Chris Sims is he does want to be a general manager in this league at some point. that's something he's working towards. And what's up, Brad? How's it going? Good to see you jumping into chat right now. Mr. Corey says Garoppolo can't even go through Shanahan's reads after 5 years and $100 million. You're right. He probably can't go all the way through it. I mean, that's one of the things that only the real great quarterbacks are able to go through the full progressions, understand where everyone's going to be, and then throw with anticipation in tight windows. And those guys are Hall of Famers. And it's getting more difficult. Players on defense are getting faster. Their understanding of concepts, of what route concepts and what offensive coordinators are trying to do to them is getting better. And all the while, because they're faster, these windows are tighter. So it is harder to play quarterback, and that's why it's harder to find a real great franchise quarterback. That's why when the 49ers felt Trey Lance could be one of those guys, they were like, 12-3? Yeah, we're going to do that because we need to get that guy that can be a big-time player. Ray says the New York Giants. Not a fan of the Giants either. The 1990 NFC Championship game is still one of the most horrific games in my 49ers fandom, so I understand what you're saying, Ray, there for sure. Forkdal says Collinsworth is the biggest 49er hater, can't stand him. I don't like listening to Chris Collinsworth call 49er games, that's for sure. When they're on Sunday Night Football, you can tell there's a little bit of pain every single time. Every single time he gets behind a microphone and sees the San Francisco 49ers, I think he goes back to 81 and he goes back to 88 and remembers those times, where they lost and the Niners beat him and robbed him of 2 opportunities to win the Super Bowl. So do I think he's a little salty at times? Of course. And you know what? If I lost 2 Super Bowls, I would have tremendous amounts of salt for the team that beat me and the organization that beat me. So I fully understand that. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to, enjoy what he does because, that's just how it is. Another thing Sim said was a lot of his big plays and on stats where I call Shanahan specials, where it's a great throw downfield and all that, but he's wide open by 10 miles. The thing is, though, right, is Trey Lance was hitting those plays. I love Jimmy, but Jimmy was missing those plays. So Kyle Shanahan's specials still have to be executed. So I think that, that's something that, maybe we need to give the kid a little bit more credit for that. We need to give credit to Trey Lance and the 49ers, staff for being able to get open wide receivers and for him hitting them. I mean, he got the ball to the sideline to Deebo Samuel. He had the one deep down the field to Deebo going across. It ended up being a touchdown. Those were great throws, and we've seen it even in preseason where he hit Trent Sherfield. And the play that you saw against Trent Sherfield in preseason, that is something that we saw in training camp almost every single day that we were there. I mean, the football was flying around, and he was hitting big-time receivers down the field. He can do this, and he's one of those guys that makes a lot of plays. So I'm definitely still excited about that. Mr. Corey says Tony Romo was biased during the 49ers Cowboys game. He was. I mean, you got to know. Here we go, Jim. He was super excited about it. Brad Jones, I watched the full Chris Sims video. I don't think he was hating on Lance. As much as I like him, how do you judge a player on 10 quarters of football? It's a good question, and I don't think you can. I think what you're really trying to do, Brad, is judge them on improvements. So the way that they operate the offense, the way they come up to the line of scrimmage and read what they're seeing. And what I saw from Trey Lance was a distinct difference from the Arizona game until the Texans game. I think you can't rate him against other quarterbacks in this league that played more football. You just have to continue to monitor his growth. And as he continues to grow, understand that he's going to have a better grip. And once he has a better grip on this offense, he's really going to be able to get to the football out to players, in open space. And now they've gotten him even more weapons. So I think things are setting up nice for Trey Lance. And if Kyle Shanahan can fully implement the offense that he wants to run with Trey Lance at the helm, they're going to open this field up horizontally and vertically more than it's ever been before. And that could be bad news for all these other defenses because that's going to create run lanes for this running game. 49er Fogey says, my hate of Collinsworth has nothing to do with his hatred for the Niners. I just can't stand the guy. There you go. Well, I mean, if you don't like him, you don't like him. And just like that, Logan's back. Welcome back. Donald Johnson is talking to Jess there. Mr. Corey says the pass to Brandon Ayuk in the back of the end zone against the Texans wasn't a wide open Shanahan special. That was Lance. Yeah, that was a nice route. That was Trey Lance understanding what he saw and then getting the football out. That's part of the improvement I'm talking about. The improvement of Trey Lance to be able to decipher what he's seeing and then get the ball to the open receiver. That's not something you saw against Arizona. We did film breakdowns of him against Arizona, and there were times he just looked away from the open receiver. And whether that is him just not understanding the playbook, or maybe, the offensive coordinator or quarterback coach, Kyle Shanahan, told him, that something was going to come open the other way, I'm not sure. But he was definitely not seeing it. And the fact that he wasn't seeing it definitely stalled the offense. The 49ers could have won that game against Arizona. Trey Lance struggled, and I'm not saying Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't have struggled, because Arizona was employing a pretty good defense and a pretty good pass rush. But Trey was missing those players early on, and I think that's something that you're gonna see him grow at. There's a reason, though, that he got better and better, even when he wasn't playing, being, that you saw him be better against the Texans. It's because you can learn in practice, and most of it is mental. And if you're learning at a better level mental, then I'm excited about it. Laxdad says, will Alex Mack show up at OTAs? If not, who's at center? I think it'll be Jake Brendel. I don't know if Alex Mack is going to show up. I would love for him to show up, because if he did, that would definitely give us the point that we need to know, right? That he's going to be back and he's going to be in San Francisco playing center this year. I think that would be a nice thing to happen. And maybe we'll get that big present of Alex Mack showing up. But if he doesn't, I think Jake Brendel's going to take the first team reps. And then I think the other guys are going to go in there and try to prove it. I think they'll probably give Brunskill some reps, even though I do anticipate them wanting to leave him at guard and keeping that chemistry and camaraderie with Mike McGlinchey. So I think that's going to happen. And then I think you'll see Donovan West and Nick Zakelj as well try to start learning the center position. I don't know how many reps they'll get. I expect Brendel to get the brunt of reps early on in OTAs. Brad Jones says 100% improvement in 3 months from week 5 to week 17 is huge. The first half against the Texans, both he and Kyle struggled to find rhythm. Both found it by the second half. They did. Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, that was the thing, is Kyle Shanahan adjusting to Trey Lance being at quarterback and what his strengths are is something that happened. And I think every coach does that at first. You have to really get familiar with the abilities of your players, so that way you can put them in the best situations to be successful. And with Jimmy Garoppolo, what his successful parts are going to be. He's going to throw the ball with a rapid release over the middle of the field, and he's going to let his playmakers get it done. But when it comes to Trey Lance, that's not what he does. He throws outside the numbers. He throws the ball down the field. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to expect him to improve over the middle of the field, but so far that hasn't happened yet. And so that's what he's going to be doing. Mr. Corey said the second half of the first Seattle game, Trey Lance was bad. I looked at he looked like he'd never played football again. Against Houston, a different story. Yeah, and that's also against Houston, a Trey Lance that had taken first-team reps in practice for a couple of times now, right? He had the experience against Arizona, and then he also knew he was going to be starting against the Texans in advance. When you come in against Seattle, you're coming in off the bench. You don't understand what you're going to see, and that early in the season, I would have some concerns. If he looked. I guess if he looked worse, I don't know how you can look too much worse, but that was definitely a struggle against Seattle. Seattle had his number, and they got after him in a big way. So that's something that we're gonna hope he continues to improve from the Texans game. I'm hoping the next time we see him, he's actually better than that. Lax Dad says, I need some slow-mo passes and OTAs to get through till camp. I don't know about everyone else, but I've really been missing football this week. I've really been struggling with it. I've been wanting to watch some 49er games. I'm just wishing the 49ers were playing some football games, and we got a little bit of ways to go until training camp. It's all the way at the end of July, so we're going to have a moment. We're going to have to get through. So, Lax Dad, I'm right there with you, trying to get through. So, some slow-mo passes, maybe some leaked footage from practice. Maybe Javier Vega can work his magic and make something happen, even though the 49ers cut the player that was doing all the recording and releasing. So, we probably won't get that now. And then let's see here. Big Papa says, Brendel was taking second-team reps with Trey Lance all last season and practice. That's a good point. That is something that's definitely to remember, is Brendel and Trey Lance's familiarity with each other is there. So I think that, that's something to monitor as well. I think Brendel would, if Alex Mack doesn't come back, Brendel's the leader in the clubhouse of the 90 men that are currently on the roster. He has to be. And I think that right now he'd be the front runner, but they would expect one of these young guys to be able to go push him. And whether that's Donovan West or Nick Zakelj, I think they want it to be one of them. I'm not sure that they really want it to be Daniel Brunskill. I know, lots of people are talking Daniel Brunskill. I just don't think that's the case. I think they want him to be right guard. I think they like what they got him at a right guard, and I think they also believe he'll actually be better So I think this is just something they're going to continue to do is work on Brendel and hope one of these young guys goes and pushes him all the way. Brad Jones says, I also don't think Trey's finger was 100% against Seattle and Arizona. It may not have been. I mean, that could definitely throw off his accuracy if you're putting less pressure in one point than another. I do believe sometimes when we get a fluttering football from Trey Lance that he's actually gripping the football too hard. And anytime he's super excited about making a play or getting in the game at a certain situation, you would see the ball flutter at first. And I think that's some of the nerves, because everyone knows if you grip that football too tight and you throw it, you're going to get a little bit of a wobble. So he's got to get some comfort factor there. And just that comes with getting more reps, with getting more comfortable with your surroundings, with understanding what you're supposed to do on the play and understanding what you're seeing. And all those things help slow your mind. And once you slow your thought process, then the game slows down. And then that's when you really start making big time plays and are able to use your full athletic ability to your disposal. So I'm super excited about, Trey Lance's abilities. The question is it going to translate right away? We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that are coming out and saying that they're hearing that Trey Lance, aren't. But we'll see. Nicholas comes through with, what are your thoughts on the Packers this year? My thoughts on the Packers are they're a good football team. I mean, anytime you have Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be in it. You got a really good defense in Green Bay. The questions are going to be this wide receiver room. How good is Christian Watson? How good is Romeo Doubs? What can they add to this team? If Christian Watson can add what MVS added initially, then you've got some dynamite weapons there in Green Bay. And Green Bay could be a real problem in the NFC. If they struggle, if they can't do the things that they were drafted to do, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't have the targets to be able to get the football out to, then it might be a little bit harder. But, they're getting the tight end back. So I do think that Green Bay is going to be a formidable foe, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a nice playoff run. So we'll see what happens. But if there starts to get some real chemistry there between Aaron Rodgers and those receivers, look out. They drafted two really good ones there, and they got some weapons. Ray says, Trey Lance is improving his throwing mechanics this offseason. He needs to play and learn from any mistakes he makes. That is the only way he's going to learn. Yeah, and Ray, one of the big things that was going on last year with Trey Lance is he did try to improve his throwing mechanics before the season started, and then when he got in there and he started taking snaps and the bullets started flying, he went back to his old ways and his throwing habits. It didn't go all the way back to how it was in college, but it went a little bit of the way back. And those are some of the setbacks, that he suffered. But it takes hundreds of thousands of reps for you to be able to learn new traits and new ways to throw and new techniques for a quarterback. It's really hard to do. So he's going to continue to work on that, and having a full offseason this year to work on it, I think, is definitely going to go a long way to help him. And we'll see what happens when the bullets start flying. Let's see if he holds that technique down. Let's see if that muscle memory is built in and he's able to handle it now. And if he's not thinking about his mechanics, he's going to be thinking about what he's doing down the field. And I think at times he does think about his mechanics. It seems very robotic at times, and that's just a young quarterback trying to learn what he's supposed to do. Mr. Corey says, these are two cupcakes to start the season for Trey. The last is at Denver in week 3. The test is at Denver in week 3. I agree, Mr. Corey. I think it is a nice way to start the season for Trey. It couldn't have worked out better for the 49ers and Trey, except maybe Carolina and Atlanta. But these are going to be two matchups that are going to be fun to watch, and potentially the 49ers can go out there and get a big win against Chicago and then a nice divisional win. So that would be good. Big Papa says I'm guessing Trey was sliding better in the Texas game. Just needs to go work out with the Giants and need the team slide first. Head first slide. I think they're going to continue to work on him getting down. That's one of the things he has to do, is he has to always learn to protect his body. He's going to be quarterback one now. When you're quarterback one, you have to protect yourself. And we know that that's something that Kyle Shanahan preaches. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo get down at times, and I think Trey Lance is going to be asked. But I wonder how many times Trey Lance is going to see a 4th and 1 or a 3rd and 1 situation, or he needs one more yard and he's going to go get it. So I think that, that's a possibility. And Brad Joe says, who finishes second in the NFC North? Lions? You know what? I don't know. I need to break down the Lions a little bit. They're ranked, according to ESPN, as the 23rd best team in the NFL. Over the 49ers at 24 was shocked the living bejesus out of me. But then also, you got the Minnesota Vikings there. They got a new regime there. They're building a new team, so I'm curious how they're going to look. I don't know. I think it's kind of wide open. I do expect the Lions to take a step forward, but I don't know. I'd have to look at their rosters a little bit more and look at their schedules. I haven't really went through all their schedules, minus the games that were just worked around what the 49ers were doing. But I think that the Detroit Lions are definitely in the mix of things right there. Ray says Green Bay Packers are done. Aaron Rodgers comes up short in the playoffs. They definitely struggle a little bit with the 49ers. I think that is true. And Nicholas says when Rodgers leaves, I think we'll draft a great quarterback. We've been lucky with that with Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You're right. You have been lucky with that. You have Love on the roster, though, and I don't know. I don't know about him, and I think that there will be a quarterback potentially you could go after. We'll see. But there's no guarantees. In San Francisco, we went from Hall of Fame quarterback to Hall of Fame quarterback, Joe Montana to Steve Young, and it's been a long, long journey since then. So, I mean, if you're lucky and you get another Hall of Fame quarterback, well done. And then Green Bay would be definitely applauded for that, and that would be nice. Ray says Trey will have some bumps in the road this season, but the season goes on, he will learn and improve from his mistakes. I think so as well. I definitely think so. If it wasn't for special teams, we won that game against the Niners. That's true. Unfortunately, special teams is 1/3 of the game, and it's one part of the game that often gets not looked at. And Green Bay was one of the worst special teams in the entire league last year, and the 49ers were right there with them. It's one of the worst. So going into that game, I famously said I expected the 49ers to make a play on special teams to win, and they did. And it's just luckily that Aaron Rodgers and that offense just really struggled with the 49ers defense just enough for the Niners to be able to get some. But that was a really good game, and it came down to a third of the game where the 49ers were maybe just a little bit better, and that's why the Niners have made a concerted effort to get better on special teams, and I'm guessing Green Bay potentially did as well. Brad Jones says we should be at least 4-2 after 6 weeks, with high potential of being 5-1. Fingers crossed, 6-0. The Broncos game is the big scary one. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Brad. I did my picks, my predictions, and the Denver game was a game I gave the Niners a loss, and it was a close loss. I think they can win that game, but I think it's going to be hard going to Mile High, playing Denver and seeing the old foe in Russell Wilson. The question is, will Russell Wilson have the chemistry with those wide receivers? If he doesn't have the chemistry with the wide receivers and the 49ers are able to slow the Broncos offense, the Niners can win the game. But the other thing is that Denver defensive front is going to be absolutely insane. They got some really good players there, and they added DJ Jones. So it's going to be tough. But you're right. If the Niners get past Denver, there's potential for them to be 6-0, which would be an absolutely great start to the season, and you would think the Niners would have not only a good chance to win the NFC West, but potentially get home field advantage in that coveted bye week in the playoffs, where then they could be healthy and have a nice trek to the Super Bowl where they don't actually have to travel the entire playoff run like they did this last year. Ray says Minnesota will finish first in the NFC North. The Packers will finish second. There you go. There is a lot of love from Minnesota recently. I've definitely seen that. And I'm sure Wimbar and Lupegas would love to hear that. Some podcasters that we worked with in the past. Mr. Corey says, and Jeff Garcia was a good B-lister after Montana and Young. Yeah, exactly. Jeff Garcia was an adequate quarterback. He did a pretty good job. He's able to create with his legs, had a pretty good arm. I mean, he was fun. It's too bad that Jeff Garcia didn't win a Super Bowl or something like that, but it's hard to win Super Bowls. It really is. Big Papa says our defense was good last year, but the depth we built, it's going to be exciting. You're right, Big Papa. The defense is definitely better now, depth-wise, than it was last year, and last year's defense was really good. But the loss of Emmanuel Mosley and Jason Verrett for the whole season was definitely showcased early on in the season. I mean, Deommodore Lenoir struggling against Philadelphia, and then them going the Josh Norman route and just trying to find somebody that could go ahead and get it done. It wasn't easy. And so I think that's one thing they've really looked at this year is they're going out there and making sure they put together the best team, 53 men, and then also the practice squad as well, but 53 guys that they believe are the best in the NFL. And if you think you're the best top to bottom, that's the way to do it. Some teams want to go out there and get the big time names. That's not always the way, to get it done. So I think that you're right. The depth-wise, it's going to be big time for the 49ers. 49er Fogey says, if it wasn't for Rodgers, the Packers wouldn't have won enough games to make the playoffs. You're probably right. I think, he has a big part to do with that. He's definitely going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback at some point. He's pretty darn good. Ray says Trey was thrown into the Cardinals game when the Cardinals were balling at the time. The only thing I wish Trey would do is slide and go out of bounds before he takes unnecessary hits. Yeah, the one at the goal line especially, I mean, that's one of those ones he tried to roll over, go over a defensive player. And I think he just got caught with two defensive players getting there at the same time. I think if it would have been one-on-one, Trey ends up getting a touchdown. But you're right, that's something he can work on, protecting himself, and I think he's going to learn that for sure. And Dana and Rosa says, Do you think Jason Verrett will start week 1? I don't know. I do want to see how he's recovering from injury. I'm curious if he's able to get out there and get in and out of his break, press off that leg that he just had the ACL injury, then he's got the potential to, because I do believe Jason Verrett is one of the better corners in this league when healthy. And I have a lot of confidence in him. So I would say that if Jason Verrett is healthy, he's going to be able to compete. I think he would win an outside corner spot opposite of Charvarius Ward. So, if he's healthy, I think he's the guy. Brad just says, are we feeling the love for the Saints, or Jameis at quarterback is holding them back? I think the Saints are a good football team, top to bottom. They've went ahead and made some improvements. But, there are questions about Jameis Winston. And one of those big questions is, how is he going to be coming off an injury? So I think that, potentially that's something that, he can get better at. Jameis Winston can get better at, his overall health, because he's definitely struggled a little bit. And he's one of those guys that's immensely talented. He really is. But how is he going to be able to handle, what's going on there? There's no more Sean Payton. Sean Payton was definitely keeping this guy under control and helping him not turn over the football. What's the offense going to look like? Are they going to want to turn it loose? Is he going to feel pressure to get at some of these weapons? It's going to be something to watch. They're definitely going to have the offense, and they have a pretty good defense. So I would say the Saints are a good football team. But we'll see what happens. And what is up, D. Will? Welcome to chat. Thanks for coming through. Really enjoy having you in chat. So let's see. Mr. Corey says DeMeco Ryans will be better in year 2 as coordinator. Ebukam will be better in year 2 as full-time starter. A healthy linebacker unit and Charvarius Ward will make this D elite. Strong safety? I think that's the question. And you're right about DeMeco Ryans. He's just going to consistently get better, because the more you understand what your players are about and who your players are, and also how offensive coordinators are going to respond to what you're doing on defense, then you're going to be able to make even more changes and subtle moves. The fact that 49ers went out and got better players as well at some positions, like Charvarius Ward, are going to give him the ability to take extra risks. He's going to be able to blitz nickel corners and blitz safeties. So a lot more versatility there. And I do believe Ebukam was learning to play with his hand in the ground last year, and that he's definitely going to be improved this year. I think he's going to get after the quarterback and be a nice player opposite of Nick Bosa, because I thought we've seen a lot of improvement in that area. So I definitely am excited about him, and I'm excited about this team. But the safety position is something that's interesting. And you brought up strong safety. If it's Talanoa Hufanga, it's strong safety, right? I do believe the 49ers would like to go with a more versatile safety room. I think they would like to go with 2 guys that they can bring in the box, 2 guys that can cover the deep third, 2 guys they could put in nickel situations and cover cover a wide receiver or tight end in the slot. But the guy that they have that can do that is Tarvarius Moore. That's not what Talanoa Hufanga does. Hufanga is definitely the strong safety type of player, the box safety who can cover the deep third, who, if you put him on an island with somebody, is probably going to get beat on one-on-one. So I don't know about that. So we'll see how it goes. After it's come out, what are your thoughts on the Packers' future with draft picks and talent? I think they've got a bright future still. I mean, they got a good coach, they got a good quarterback, and anytime you have those 2 things, you definitely have the ability to continue to build, and they often build, through the draft and not through free agency. So I think they'll be okay. Dana says, I love that no one's talking about Debo. No news is good news. 1 or 2 more months, we will have confirmation. Yeah, I think we're going to get confirmation pretty quick, because, Debo Samuel is going to have to make sure he starts showing up, because if he doesn't show up to things, he starts getting fined. And that's one of the things that the collective bargaining agreement has changed throughout the years. And Lou asked this question in one of our comments, and I wanted to wait till today to talk about it, Debo Samuel can get fined if he doesn't show up. Under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, a player can be fined up to $14,775 for skipping the first day of minicamp. And as you miss minicamp, it escalates. You miss a second time, you get $29,550 fine. If you skip a third day of minicamp, you can be fined $44,325. And those aren't they're all separate. So potentially he could be fined $88,650. And that's a lot, that's a lot. And he hasn't made a lot of money on his rookie contract. So that might be a lot for him to be able to handle. And I think that, that's one of the things, teams are actually required to do this. So it's not one of those things where he can get it back. He's going to be, incurring a lot. And that's the thing. If you don't show up to training camp, those fines get even bigger. $40,000 daily fine. Is that something that he's going to be able to do? Sit out a game. You sit out a game, you lose 1/18 of your salary. I'm not sure this is something that Deebo Samuel is really going to be able to handle, guys. And that was a really good question by Lou, but the team is not going to can't forgive these guys anymore for that money. So if you sit out, you might in fact lose some of that money. So I think that's a good question. And one of the reasons I don't believe Deebo Samuel is going to sit out. Let's see if he does take the opportunity to sit out of, OTAs or mini camp. And if he does mini camp, we'll see what happens when it gets to training camp. I don't think he's going to sit out of training camp. I think the 49ers are going to come to an agreement before training camp happens. But we'll see if he sits out of minicamp and how dug in he is. And Shane, Arizona 49ers Empire says, I really do feel the 49ers and Deebo will come to an agreement. And I'm with you on that, Shane. I think the 49ers and Deebo Samuel are going to come to an agreement as well. And I think that will really help a lot of things, that a lot of things that the Niners want to do. And I think some of the conversation points that were coming out about him not wanting to be wide back, him wanting to play more of a receiver role, I do believe the 49ers were working towards that. I don't think they think what they did with Deebo Samuel last year was sustainable. You can't do that for 17 games and then a playoff run. But I do believe they want him to do that at times. They want him to win football games. And Big Papa comes through with, what happens if he holds in? I don't know. Do the old school lock in, everyone get in the gym and just hang out. I don't know. Big Papa, good one. Frank says anticipation, emphasizing the ant part for the season. Yeah, exactly, Frank. I'm with you right there. Can't wait for the season to get going. So I'm excited. And Forktal says, is Tart signed? No, Tart is not signed. Some of the conversation about Tart is, I wonder if the 49ers are actually interested in Tart. I've seen media outlets talk about the Niners have zero interest in Tart, and I'm trying to look at this and say, how can they not be interested in bringing in a guy that's going to be cheap? The only thing I can think would be the holdup is he would cost more than your top 51 contracts. Realistically, from what he signed last year, he's going to make more than the top 51. So you don't have the salary cap space right now to sign him. So potentially once a move happens, they can make a move on Tart. So I don't expect anything imminent. Now that I said that, they'll probably end up signing him tomorrow. Just kidding. I don't know. But I think that it could be something that's holding up this reunion, because why not? Why wouldn't you bring back Jaquiski Tart to be able to compete with these guys? It's going to be a low risk, high reward situation. So I think that Tart, is a guy that's still an option for the 49ers, even though I have seen a lot of, outlets saying he's not going to be in San Francisco. To me, it just still makes the most sense. The fact him and Jimmy Ward have such chemistry together, why not let him come in and compete and see what happens? I think it's still a possibility. And Ray says, Jimmy needs to get traded or cut for Bosa and Deebo both to get paid. I think when it comes to Bosa, there's going to be so many contracts off the books next year, which is scary to say, but there is going to be so many contracts off the books next year that the Bosa deal is going to get done, after next year. They exercise his 5th-year option, which means they have him, fully held onto and ready to roll for seasons to come. He's going to be entering year 4, so they have him for another year after that. So I think next offseason is the hot spot for Nick Bosa, and I fully expect them to do that. But they're going to have some money available. I think they would love to address Jimmy Garoppolo's contract, because if they did, it would free up $25 million that they could use and potentially to get Deebo Samuel under contract. But an extension for Deebo Samuel could look a variety of different ways, including Deebo Samuel making less money this year against the cap. And that's something they could really do. They could, spread some of it out amongst the length of his contract. They could use, give him a nice hefty signing bonus. So I think that there are things that they can do for sure to make sure they have cap flexibility. They haven't really incurred a lot of dead money yet, but they could. So we'll see what happens. Ray says Lynch made it sound like Tart is not coming back. Yeah, he definitely made it sound like he wasn't talking to Tart. And that's how all things are. Just because you didn't talk to Tart doesn't mean you won't talk to Tart. At some point, when you're looking at, when you get into, OTAs, mini camps, and you see these, safeties running around and they're in coverage, you might look at each other and be like, you know what, we should bring Tart in for competition. He might be the best option we got going there. I don't think this 90-man roster is set. I've seen people say this 90-man roster is now set. No, it's not. There's going to be changes along the way. The closer we get to training camp, there'll be more. But 90-man roster's never set. You're always trying to get better. Somebody's going to cut a player. You're going to find a player that you want to bring into the team. Decide somebody on your roster can't cut it from what you've seen in practice, and you go ahead and you move on with another option. So, and nothing is ever set. And Brad Jones says maybe Kyle still holds a grudge against Tart for that drop in the NFC Championship game. as much as that play is very much highlighted, I guarantee you there's a lot of plays that stand out in that game for this coaching staff and these players. And I'll bet you there's play calls that stand out in Kyle Shanahan's mind that he's like, man, if I would have done this, we'd have won. As somebody that's been a part of some of those games, some of those big time games, championship games, and I was calling offense, I would often look back and be like, man, what if I would have done that? Or what if I would have done this? Or if I would have thought of this? It's really a stressful thing. And coaches, often have to deal with it, and you carry it, way after the game is ever even over. So yeah, it's something there. Big Papa says it's what my grandkids call me. I thought it was better than having my full name out there. There you go. Not bad. I love it when you call me Big Papa. Good song. Ray, let's see. Salary cap is 2023 will be a better situation than this past year with Jimmy. D Ford, bad contracts off the books. Yeah, I look for D Ford potentially to be a June 1st designation. Let's see what happens there. I don't know for sure, but I mean, that's what it all points to. The 49ers would incur some dead money from D Ford. They already do from the restructuring, but I think they had to go ahead and make that move. So I think so. And Big Papa says they already made a change at tight end. Which tight end move are you referring to there? I mean, they pretty much just have the same guys, right? You're talking. Never mind. You're talking about Fumagili or whatever his name is. Apologies, Big Papa, for questioning you on that. You're right. They did make that move, so well done. I actually had kind of forgot about that actually. So well done there. Let's see. Forsall says if we lose Tart, who we got to replace his physicality? Dude hits hard. I think physicality-wise is Talanoa Hufanga. But one thing I will say is Hufanga is still growing in the coverage aspect of his game and in the run fits. There are times he's a little bit out of position. That's something that Tart does at a high level. Tart can set the edge. Tart can get in the lanes that he needs to get in. He can go through the open windows and make plays. I think sometimes people undervalue how good Jaquiski Tart actually is for this 49ers defense. He may not be one of the best safeties in the league, but he may be one of the best safeties in the league for the San Francisco 49ers. And sometimes that can go unnoticed, but he's a really good football player, and the things he adds to this team are important. And so I'm a little shocked they haven't made a move there to bring him in. Maybe they believe Hufanga is ready to roll. Maybe they believe Tarvarius Moore can handle it. We'll see. Mr. Core says Kyle chickening out on the 4th and 2 led to the Tart drop. Yeah, I mean, 4th and 2, that's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, it really is. You wonder if you're going to be able to get that. You wonder if you're going to be able to get that yardage. I mean, I would like to go for it, but sometimes coaches look at it different ways, and Kyle Shanahan was brought up to look at it a certain way. We know that from everything we've talked about on this, that I'm a go for it all the time kind of guy. I like taking chances, I like getting after it. So, yeah. And then Brad Jones says, do you think the Niners were in for James Bradbury but got priced out for the tight salary cap right now? Yeah, they weren't going to be able to, afford James Bradbury. And I think they do feel very comfortable with the cornerback room the way it is currently constituted. He would have been a nice addition, but you're not paying a player $10 million after you already paid another guy at the same position $10 million. And Ray says Weston Richburg was another bad contract. Richburg is what the 49ers, do often, is they want to go get an experienced player to play center, and Richburg was going to be that guy, a guy that's perfectly built for Kyle Shanahan's offense. Unfortunately, his body really did fail him and betray him. So I think that it's looking back on it, it's bad. Same with Jet McKinnon, guys who couldn't stay healthy. So those are not good situations, and the 49ers are trying to ensure that those don't happen again. And so you see the way that they're valuing offensive linemen. They're just trying to draft players and develop, and maybe that's the avenue the Niners continue to go with. Big Papa says it was more like a 4th and 3. I think it was a wise decision. It could have been, that's the thing is I don't remember exactly how far it was. I remember it wasn't a 4th and 1 for sure. It wasn't like 4th and inches where you expect Jimmy Garoppolo to, get the quarterback sneak and get it done. I remember it had a little bit of yardage to it. So it's definitely a little bit tough. Brad Jones says, and straight after the Tart drop, Jimmy Ward did this stupid helmet-to-helmet hit on OBJ. Yeah, I mean, you got to keep your face up. You got to make sure you keep your head out of the play and out of the tackle. Jimmy Ward's a very smart player, and he understands what he's supposed to do. And that was a time where he kind of let himself get distracted by the moment and make a bad play, and it put the Los Angeles Rams in a very advantageous situation they took advantage of. And that's too bad that your safety position let you down in those two situations. But There are plenty of times throughout the game where I can guarantee you there's a lot of football players on the 49ers team that feel like they could have made a play or they missed a play. It's just really highlighted in those particular situations. So I think that the Niners can definitely get better. The football players know they can get better, and I think they'll work on it. And then Brad Jones says, wait, I'm sorry. I almost read the same one. Sorry, Brad. Tassio says, do you think the silence from Mac is a good or bad omen? I actually don't know. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where I keep trying to believe optimistically that Mac's going to come back. I just think it's weird a little bit that John Lynch talked about him having, you know, you're going to hear from Mac when it's time kind of thing. I mean, he could just be alluding to Mac just when he finally gives the final word that he's going to let everyone know. It won't be John Lynch's place. But I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Alex Mack coming back. I think he comes back and gives it a run for one more year. And then I always believed he was going to play 2 years of his 3-year contract because I believe the third year was just stretching the financial concerns for the 49ers. So maybe. Ray says Richburg had an injury concerns with the Giants before becoming a Niner. Yeah, he did. But at the time, you know, I mean, and that's the thing, Ray, at the time, you have to bring in players that you can get to come to San Francisco. And you're worried about getting players to come to a bad football team. The 49ers didn't show that they were a good football team, so they needed to bring players in, you know, and so they went out and got Reston Richburg, and they overpaid for him, and they overpaid for, you know, Jet McKinnon as well, and potentially Quan Alexander, but they had to get football players to come here so they could try to turn around this program. So I think that's what they were doing. So, I mean, was it the best? No, but it's one of those things you're living with. Frank says, do you think we can trade for Ariaza? It would be a difference in our season. I think the Ariaza thing is finally sailed, Frank. I'm sorry about that. Dana says, do you think we'll sign Julio for the 5th or 6th receiver spot? If Julio gets signed, he's going to be the 3rd receiver on this team. And I don't think Julio's getting signed unless he's willing to play for pennies on the dollar. So that would have to happen, you know, after a Jimmy Garoppolo style move. They need to free up some cap space to be able to sign for their rookies, and then their draft picks, and they have to be able to, you know, potentially sign other players. And I think the only way that makes sense is if Jimmy Garoppolo is not on the books. So I don't think a move for Julio Jones would happen then, but if it did, I believe he'd be your 3rd wide receiver. Mr. Corey says they were in Rams territory deep in the 4th quarter with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. Yeah, they had an opportunity, and that's all you're trying to get, right? Is an opportunity to win the game and go to the Super Bowl, and they couldn't. Why is Ariaza... why is Aziz called for unsportsmanlike conduct, and I never to see that? I don't understand why Aziz got called for that as well. I think it was a little ticky-tack, but that happens sometimes, unfortunately, and that definitely did happen in that situation. I wasn't a huge fan of that, about that call. So at some point, I would love to get an actual explanation of what happened there, but we just haven't got it so far. Let's see. Ray says, I still didn't like the Richburg signing. I just had that bad feeling at the time. Well, then you were right. You know, I mean, you were on the right target there. So maybe they should start asking Ray, you know, what he's feeling about it, because he was definitely spot on that one, because I liked the Richburg signing when it happened, because I knew he fit what Kyle Shanahan wanted to do, and we needed an improvement over Daniel Kilgore. But I understand now it definitely looks terrible. Tassios, it's so crazy to see how much our front office has gone. As much as everyone talks poorly about our drafts, our evaluators are in demand. They are. That's the thing. People understand that they've built a really deep roster here. You don't build a team that's as deep as the San Francisco 49ers are right now without knowing what you're doing in the front office and being able to evaluate players. And also with that, the development of players. This coaching staff has done a very good job of developing players that were, undrafted or late round picks. I mean, right off the bat, we just had a conversation about Aziz and him getting that penalty. Undrafted free agent. Emmanuel Mosley in the mix. Undrafted free agent. I mean, they've went out and took players that are developmental players, and they've turned them into absolute gems. You have to give credit to this coaching staff. You have to give credit to this front office. They've done a really good job. And I think sometimes that, maybe it's not recognized by the media or not recognized by the fan base, but it's definitely recognized around the league. And that's why so many coaches and front office personnel are, in other spots and other organizations. And Rand Carthon is probably going to be the next one to go from the front office, if it's not Adam Peters as well. The 49ers are going to keep losing coaching staff, and they're going to keep losing front office personnel because they do things the right way. And that's all you can ask for, is a team that's currently putting their best foot forward, and that's what this front office has been doing. So I'm definitely excited about, that potential. So let's see. Mr. Corey says Azeez foul was the makeup call for the missed hit on Stafford by Fred Warner after K1's interception. It could be. And that brings up another question. Why do I can't stand makeup calls. I just can't stand it. Dana says, what do you think makes more of an impact, Drake or Gray? I think it's going to be Gray. I think Gray's going to influence the offense even when the ball isn't in his hands. The way he's going to be able to take the top off the defense is going to make sure that defenses have to employ a safety over the top at times. And that's going to free things up for other players to be able to make plays. So I think he has an instant impact because he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands to make something happen. Where Drake is going to be a part of one of the biggest rotations and best rotations on the defensive line in the NFL. So I wonder how many reps he's actually going to get in his rookie season. I believe he will be a part of the rotation. But definitely they're going to have to, keep working on it. Shane says developing players while they're turning over the packing staff. Yeah, they are. They're doing a really good job of consistently, moving players, but getting better. And I like what they're doing, or the coaching staff. Yeah, I like what they're doing overall, Shane. I really do. I think that they're like, they never have a rebuild moment because they're staying competitive while completely infusing the team with talent. And this is what you saw from Bill Walsh. There was a big draft that he had. 1986 comes to mind, where you're transitioning away from some of his early drafts into another era of draft picks. And that helped the 49ers get all the way into the 90s with some of those great picks. So it's super smart, and that's how you have to do it. You don't want to do anything but reload. You're not rebuilding, you're reloading. Tisio says, in a vacuum, would you take Ryans or Fangio as your DC? I want DeMeco Ryans. I like what he did last year. I like the versatility that he employed. He's a young guy, and so I would go with him. And I think Fangio is potentially going to be the coordinator next year. We'll see. I'm not even completely sold on that yet, but he is around the organization, which, if you're reading the tea leaves, means he definitely could be a part of the organization. But I'll take DeMeco Ryans until DeMeco Ryans is gone. And then Frank says Adam Peters and his scouts top-notch. They really are. And, the fact that they've went out and located these players and drafted them, they had a really good draft, a lot of, high caliber individuals. And that's what you want to add to your team, guys that are going to make an impact on your team. So I did really like that. Big Papa says Gray will be initially, but I believe that Drake is a long-term and may have more of an impact. Yeah, if we're talking long-term, potentially Drake could have a more long-term, impact on this 49ers team. But we'll see, and I think he is a very talented player, and he's only 22 years old, so he's going to continue to develop. But he will get there at some point, and when he does, he's going to make an absolute impact on this football team. And Mr. Course says, Ant, you have to troll Packers fan in here bragging about Packers championships won before the car was invented. Those NFL championships were what? Are we talking the Super Bowl 1 and 2, or are we talking like NFL championships like in the 50s? I did not see those comments. Sorry, I missed them from Nicholas. I saw that you guys were having some banter, but I did not see that. And Forksall says, Ant, would you rather get Treader or keep Mack if he don't retire? I know that Treader would make the most sense because he's a guy that's younger that you're going to have for a longer period of time. But I think the most obvious would be keep Mack because of the contract. You already have Mack for $6.5 million. And so you've already planned for that financially. I think with Treader, he's wanting a lot of guaranteed money. So if you want to guarantee him all that money and pay him a high amount of money, it could take away from your potential to sign other players down the road. Treader's a very good football player, probably better than Alex Mack right now, but it might not make the most sense right now. 49ers Fogey says, right now, Drake is a one-trick pony. He's definitely developing. I think he's going to be a situational pass rusher for the 49ers, and I think he's going to develop into a three-down defensive end. And I've seen Chris Kaserik do this. And Darryl Tapp has definitely helped as well. They've developed guys to be able to play edge, for many years. And Drake Jackson's going to turn into one of the good football players. But year 2, year 3 is, I think, when you're going to start to see him explode onto the scene and start making plays. I wouldn't be shocked if he had some really nice moments this year. But coming down the road, he's going to be a big guy and potentially could be the answer, opposite of Nick Bosa for years to come. And Ray says, when things went crazy this offseason with Jimmy and Debo drama, I go back to 2004, the worst season ever, and I start feeling better. That helps. Just go back to when it was really bad. Was that Dennis Erickson? I mean, those were just some terrible football teams back then. And yeah, you're definitely excited about what the 49ers can do currently. We're competing. That's what you want to do. You want to be able to compete year in and year out. get to the playoffs, be able to make something happen. And we all know if you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. And I think that's something that's exciting. And the opportunity to win a Super Bowl is definitely something you want your team to be able to do. And the 49ers have put themselves in position to potentially be able to do that. And Tio says, who has more receiving yards this year, Debo or Ayuk? I think it's going to be Ayuk. I think Debo Samuel is going to get a lot of bracket coverage. I think they're going to try to take him away. So I think that, that's one of the things that you could see. Brandon Ayuk, I think they'll actually be really close in yardage. I wouldn't be shocked if it's not within like 100 yards of each other. But I think there's going to be opportunities for Ayuk to get a little bit more of the football than he has in years past. So I think maybe we got to go with Ayuk. And then Frank says Ayuk, Debo, Kittle will be dominant skill players. Trey should be able to have fun. Yeah, they are. And because of a draft pick that the 49ers got in Danny Gray, they're going to have more room to operate over the middle of the field. And potentially with Dre being able to keep people in check as far as the run game, they're going to have more times where they run the football as well. It's going to create more big shots down the field in the play action game. So I think you're right. I think it all works together. Mr. Court says Mac is gone. There would be no reason to keep it quiet if he was coming back, unless he hadn't decided. I mean, that's the thing, right? If he hadn't decided, then potentially it would be quiet. And they just told the 49ers, I don't know yet. I mean, he didn't have to make a decision. So there you go. Let's see. Let's see if we got any more questions here. Okay, yeah, the Packers fan was solidly a Packers fan and was pretty polite. I agree. So far, we've had Packer Cast come in a couple days ago, and then Nicholas coming through today, and I thought they did a pretty good job. I did not read all the comments, so I don't know what else was said, but I don't mind having a little bit of banter going on. It's nice conversations to have, and Green Bay is a good football team. So I think that's a good point there. 2004, the 2 wins against the Cardinals, 31-28 in OT, identical scores that year of Tim Rattay and Dennis Erickson, 2-14. Shake my head. Whew. Oh man, Dennis Erickson. Man, I mean, it ain't Miami, right? We got the Oregon State Dennis Erickson. We didn't get the Miami Dennis Erickson, where he was out there tearing it up, having all those great players. Oh, geez. Man, those seasons just make me cringe and make me very appreciative of what we have today. Front office and coaching staff that knows what they're doing. And Tessio says, what do you prefer, watching a game in a crowded bar when it's tough to pay attention, or home by self, able to concentrate? Give me home by myself, or home with a limited amount of people, so I can concentrate on what's going on, especially because I really get into the football side of it, understanding why they're trying to do certain things, how to attack a defense, looking at what the defense is doing when the Niners are on offense, and then when they're on defense, going the other way. So I'm really about that. I'm really about watching the game in certain environments, and that's why I don't go to too many games. Occasionally I'll go to a football game, but you're kind of, I always have to go back and watch it because I want to see the intricacies of what Kyle Shanahan was looking at when he was calling offense, or what DeMeco Ryans was doing on defense. Those things play in my mind. It's just the coaching aspect of it. I just love it. So I feed off the X's and O's. And so, yeah, I definitely have to watch it in a little bit more of a quiet setting. Frank says, off to Waikiki. Aloha, TCC. See you on the other side. Have a good one, Frank. Have a good day, and thanks for coming through. Really appreciate it. Big Papa says, we were still playing off a long-term contracts from the 1980s and 90s. Our salary cap was messed up. Yeah, it was bad. The end of the 90s, the salary cap got absolutely wrecked. And the early part of the 2000s, the 49ers were in they were in purgatory, cap purgatory. So you're right. I mean, it was pretty bad there. So Freddie says, happy Thursday from La Jolla. Wow, still enjoying San Diego. Lucky Freddie McDre. Yeah, that's someplace I would love to be. Wow, that's really nice. Well done. Freddie McDre has just been living the life. I mean, from coming to the draft party and getting to talk to him. I mean, he's just a good dude. And then he gets to go over to San Diego. Well done. I mean, well done. I just like it. Big Papa says a crowded bar is a blast as long as you can record it at home and watch it intensely. Yeah, exactly. The atmosphere is fun. I mean, that's one of the best things about football, the excitement, being able to express your excitement with people around you. That's a really good time. That's a fun time. And then I think that after that, then you can go home and watch it, and that works. So I would be with you on that. Mr. Court says, bragging about the Packers having more championships than the 49ers in the 49ers chat room is pretty polite. Well, I mean, it might be misguided, but I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, people have a hard time, 49er fans, not just 49er fans, but all fans. They like to talk up their team, and if they get challenged, I mean, that's usually the first conversation. It goes to championships. That's just kind of how it is. I mean, that's the way it is. And Tommy Huxley coming with Lombardi was overrated. Wow, going after Vince. Wow. I can't believe you just did that, Tommy. You're going to make all Green Bay fans so upset. Their heads are going to explode right now. I just love listening to Lombardi talk about football, though. You got to steal here, and you get up the alley. Yeah, I mean, some of the early parts of football were different than they are today. And I think Lombardi was one of the great coaches of his time, and he had really good football players back then. And it's a different era. And I think that's why you kind of have to keep football in eras, because things change so much. So Ray says, 49er fan since 1978, and I've experienced the dynasty of the 80s. I hope the young faithful get to experience a new Empire dynasty, the 80s, best times ever. That's right. I experienced the 80s as well, Ray. I'm right there with you. And it was such a fun time. I wish that the new generation would get to experience the same things that we got to experience, the expectations of winning a Super Bowl every single year and the absolute, destruction of not. But then looking back on it so fondly because of all the championships that they won and all the big plays that were made in those games and all the heroes' names that we remember. I mean, who else remembers Dan Buns? I know I do, because in 1981 he made a play at the goal line and one of the greatest goal line stands in Super Bowl history. But no one would remember him, if it wasn't for that situation. So I think those things are really cool. Alexa says, "How do we get you media access for OTA's camp? Any?" So what you have to do is you have to go through the NFL, and you have to get credentials, and that's a process. It's definitely a long process. And something you have to eventually be employed by a media outlet or create a media outlet of that sort. So OTAs is going to be tough, but training camp, I will be at training camp. I know last year me and Alex both went to training camp. It was a good time. We went up like 4 or 5 times. I'm planning on going up there. I'm going to watch training camp because I want to see everything up close and personal, because I think being able to see what's going on in the field, it definitely helps. And there's some cool moments where you get to see some guys really doing things. I know we saw people get, injured, which stunk, but you could see it happen. So you have, on time reporting, and last year we did a lot of live streams after the training camps. We would hustle home and we would do it, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to doing that this year as well. It's exciting. Big Papa says, any bar in Roseville where we used to watch the game sometime. Oh, there you go. Bar in Roseville. That's not too far. Yeah, that's not too far from me either. So that's nice. Tassio says, I still remember Mike Rumpf, Kenton Balmer, and the like was too young to even comprehend how terrible they were. Remember when we complained about Solomon Thomas? Yeah. Wow. Why'd you have to bring up Mike Rumpf and Kenton Balmer? Wow. Yeah, I mean, and Rashawn Woods, another one. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. KNDR Collectible says, fan since 97. I expected 4 wins a year growing up. Hey, low expectations for KNDR mean the Niners can always impress him, right? Always impress him. Ray says, Fred Dean, Eric Wright, great players of the 80s that don't get brought up enough. Agreed. Fred Dean with a cigarette, smoking, getting it done, but an excellent pass rusher, really good impact player for the 49ers for a lot of years, a dominant player. And Eric Wright, yeah, one of my favorite corners ever. Really liked Eric Wright. And who doesn't like number 21? And really, I mean, one of the more pivotal players in the 49ers dynasties. Jan says, and are you going to Mexico? I don't know where I'm going right now. I'm looking at the schedule a little bit. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. So we'll see. It's all to be determined right now. There's a lot of things going on. Brad says, you see Thanos' father tipped the Niners to have a losing record, or picked the Niners to have a losing record this season. I didn't see that, but I did see that, that Grant had picked the Niners to go 9-8. I believe David Lombardi picked the Niners to go 9-8 too. So there's a lot of belief that the Niners aren't going to break double-digit wins this year. So I think that's interesting. That is definitely interesting. So Freddie Solomon was a great wide receiver of the 80s. I did like Freddie Solomon. He had some speed there. He definitely had some speed. Oh, Danny Buns used to have a bar in Roseville. That's what it was, Big Papa. Thanks for clarifying. I did not know Danny Buns had one there. But that's really nice. And then Forktall says, salary cap won't allow for dynastic teams anymore, like 80s, 90s, unfortunately, in my opinion. Yeah, I think it would be really hard. You know what I mean? It really would. The way the pay scale is for quarterbacks as well makes it just more and more difficult. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Mr. Course says Mike Rump stuck his arm out and Steven Jackson snapped it like a twig. Steven Jackson was an absolute monster, by the way. That guy could run the football. He was big and physical. So yeah. Let's see. Tommy says, where's Megan? Does she know the Cubbies are terrible? I don't know where Megan is right now, but I'm sure she's probably not watching the Cubbies game if they're playing terrible. So, and that's something that's going to be cool, right? The Giants are going to be playing the Cubs the same time the Niners are playing Chicago Bears. So that's going to be a fun weekend for anyone that's able to go up there for that. Hacksaw Reynolds, last year of the NFL career with the Niners in the 80s. Hacksaw Reynolds was one of those guys that taught a lot of the players the intellectual part of the game. He really did. He spread a lot of wealth, you know, and that was things that made all these guys so much better. Keenan Turner talks about it a lot and how he looked at it and understood, and same with Ronnie Lott. Hacksaw Reynolds was a big impact on those players and how they looked at football. So I think that's really nice. Hacksaw Reynolds is a good one to bring up. I like Hacksaw a lot. And talk about a very intense guy. They talked about the fact that it'd be 12 hours before the game and be fully geared up in the cafeteria eating food. Crazy. I think that's a cool story. So Hacksaw, one of those really interesting guys, but one of the great 49ers of the 80s for sure. Ray says Ray Wersching, the best field goal kicker of all time. I definitely like Ray Wersching a lot more than Mike Kofer. I definitely like Ray Wersching a lot. Wersching was the first kicker that I remember watching, of course. Never look up. Just kept his head down, looking at the football. Was very accurate. I mean, in 1981 Super Bowl, he had 3 pivotal field goals in that game that helped the 49ers win. So yeah, he's definitely one of those guys that I like. Mr. Corey, Merton Hanks with the chicken dance. Yeah, and what's crazy, right, isn't it not supposed to be a chicken dance? Isn't it supposed to be something else? But it sure looked like a chicken dance, and it got called a chicken dance. So Merton Hanks was a guy that played out of position at corner, and once he got moved to free safety, was an absolute terror and a perennial Pro Bowler. What a great player he was, playing with Tim McDonald. Ray says Bill Romanowski and Matt Millen, great linebackers. Matt Millen coming over from the Raiders late in that season. I believe it was week 2 or week 3. After he got cut, and then coming over and playing in the 1989 49ers that won the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos. He was definitely thought of as a Raiders guy, and that was a different philosophy, and he made an instant impact on the 49ers. So that's a good one. And Bill Romanowski, a draft pick of Bill Walsh, and a really good football player that played a lot of years in this league and had a lot of success. Both of those guys were really good players. So we can talk about Niner players like all the time because there are so many really good players. And Jan's talking about the Smith brothers. That's Alden Smith, Justin Smith, really good football players. And I think that, that's the thing about the Niners' rich history. There's a rich history in San Francisco of great players. Mr. Corey says, Mike Kofer determined quick after being a Pro Bowler, or deteriorated quick after being a Pro Bowler. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And Jan Stewart says Patrick Willis. Patrick Willis is one of the good ones. And so I think that, Pat is one that we're always going to live up to. He's one of the great ones. So, and then a longtime Niner fan says, thanks, Dan, for being eyes, ears, analysts for us Niner fans. The Niners this year, at least 11-6. People need to keep in mind how NFC as a whole dropped off in talent. That's a good point, longtime Niner fan, and thank you so much for saying that. I really do appreciate it. And you're right. I think that looking around, so many cornerbacks, moved to the AFC. It's unfortunate the 49ers are playing the AFC West, where there's a lot of really good football players. But I think 11-6 is a good number, and I picked the Niners to go 12-5. I think 11-6, 12-5. I think those are solid numbers and realistic numbers, and it's not that far off from what a lot of other people see it as. But of course, we don't know what's going to happen with injuries and stuff. But it could easily tip the other way too, and the Niners could win even more games. So I'm definitely excited about this team, and because of the depth and top to bottom ability, you got to think that even they can overcome injuries again. They were able to overcome losing their number 1 corner in Jason Verrett last year. Not a lot of teams can do that, and they were able to do that. They were able to overcome at most of the year not having the number 2 linebacker on the team in Dre Greenlaw. He didn't play a lot. They had key guys out, and they were still able to make plays. They were counting on D Ford, and D Ford wasn't able to produce for them. So that's one of the things with the 49ers, that depth creates opportunities for them to still be able to compete when maybe they shouldn't be able to compete. So I do like that. Oh, we're still going through the names of players, and I'm going to say this: we're deep into it now. So I'm going to take a couple more questions before I hop off. So if you guys want to, give me a couple questions, and then I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. But I really have had a great conversation with all of you. This has been exciting, and we went through a lot of things. Whether it was Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo, or just even talking about Jason Verrett, and I've had a lot of fun. The one thing I was going to point out too is PFF put out their best players under 25, and this is a list that just recently Fred Warner was on, and now Nick Bosa is the number one guy. Nick Bosa is ranked the number one player according to PFF under the age of 25. The fact that he's ahead of Justin Herbert, running back Jonathan Taylor, is interesting, right? As he's ahead of them and ahead of Micah Parsons. So Nick Bosa is the number one guy under 25, and in 2021 he had 15.5 sacks with a 90% pass rush grade. So he better. So yeah, I think so. I think Nick Bosa deserves that award and that accolade, and I think he is the number one guy in the league that's under the age of 25. So I'm excited for that. Shane says, "Hell yeah, thanks for the community." Yeah, this has been really great, guys. I really have been enjoying the interaction that we've been having. You guys have been with me all week. Yesterday, gutting through Cutback Colony when we were having audio issues, and I really appreciate everyone that stood by and came through. You guys were absolutely fantastic. I never appreciated you more than I appreciated you in that moment. When it was a little bit of a struggle for me, you're rolling right with me, and I really do appreciate that. And every single day, you guys come through, and I enjoy talking with 49er fans, and a lot of intelligent 49er fans come through chat all the time and just leave wonderful comments and ask great questions, and that's what makes it fun. Big Papa says, but we still wasn't a Pro Bowl or even a second team. What a joke. Nick Bosa should have been he should have been an All-Pro. That is definitely something that should have happened, and it's a joke that he wasn't. And there's no reason he shouldn't have been. I think he's going to go out there with a chip on his shoulder. So I'm really hoping that they did, tick off Nick Bosa a little bit, so he goes in there and gets excited. Let's see. Ray says Mike Singletary can't win with him. That was interesting. That was definitely funny. So there you go. That was a good one. And guys, with that, I'm going to say this. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I really did enjoy this conversation today. Thanks everybody. Big Papa, thank you so much. I had a blast as well. And I'm looking forward to everything that's going to be happening. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of great conversations in the future. So much. And David Campbell, thank you so much for everything that you do as well. David often shares our stuff all on social media, leaves nice, kind words. We really appreciate you, David, and appreciate everyone that was in chat today helping out with the video and helping me out this week. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again on the next one. And the right way is always the 49ers way.